Good morning. I got my coffee. Aaron's got his coffee. We're a Coffee with the Summerland Kids. This is episode 102 of our ongoing saga. And the
The
weather and
story goes on. Another
story
another
goes on.
morning, another cup of coffee,
We're alive. Yeah.
and we're live.
And we're live. And it's August 27th, 2024. The weather in Summerland today is 62 currently, high of 78. Another mostly sunny day in Summerland. Seems like a consecutive, gorgeous summer session they're having. Um, Maybe someday I'll include a surf report if it pops up somehow big or something. We'll include the Santa Barbara surf report in ours.
There you go.
Yeah.
A little bit of
So
Summerland surf.
yeah, exactly. So Aaron and I were just chatting pre-show about like family dynamics, and after my experience at the estate sale, kind of learned a little bit more about the upsides and downsides of relationships within families, and how sometimes, certainly in my family at least, when you have like stepchildren and people pass away and people get remarried and all that stuff, and it is sort of important to have what I've learned most recently is paperwork involved in sometimes in marriages, especially, and also when marriages go past 20 years, past 10 years, all that stuff. You could say, hey, you can kind of, like my cousin said something like, after like 10 years, you think you could trust a person to trust another person to say, hey, we're actually a legitimate couple, and that's what we do. That's who we are and what we're all about. We're essentially married, and then once you're married, your affairs and your conjoined um, earnings and homes you own and all that stuff. It's sort of like, okay, there is that side of it where you can see that what someone brought to the table from their past definitely has a effect on the now and the future. So it's quite interesting, and how sometimes people get carried away because of the lack of paperwork and the lack of certain things. And then, of course, when you move state to state, the laws are different, and it's unfortunate how sometimes family members get cut out of what you might feel that is fair, because there might be someone in the family who's like maybe doesn't like another family member for whatever reason, personal reasons, or their associated partner slash wife, husband, whatever, doesn't like that person. So then they edge their wife or husband. Hey, you got to get that money.
Yeah, I imagine there was a bit of that, going on. You're doing an estate sale, so obviously
Yeah,
someone's estate is getting liquidated,
yeah,
and I imagine somebody other than the original owner is managing, power of attorney or trustor or trustee or whatever
yeah,
is
yeah.
managing that. I know that it happened in my family. The house my mom grew up in.
Where was that
My
at?
grandma lived in it, and then when my grandma got sick, my uncle came and just took everything over, and just
Oh,
I'm
wow.
power of attorney. I could write checks, I could live in the house, and I
Oh,
get to decide
oh,
where
wow.
everything goes.
That was your
My
mom's
grandma
dream.
did
Yeah.
have a will, so there was a certain amount left to everybody as far as
Okay.
once the estate was liquidated. But my uncle Mark, he was the one that bought himself a new car, lived in the house for however many years, spent the money out of the bank account, and when it all was said and done, took everything up and above what was actually specified in the will. So yeah, I could see there's been some difficulties. I've had friends that I've known the brothers and the sister, and one of the family members passes and leaves a property or something. Now, who's in charge, or are we going to put money into it and keep it in the estate? Are we going to liquidate it? If we liquidate it, who gets what and why do they get that? And
Mhm.
certain conditions, if this, then that, if not this, then this. And yeah, there could definitely be some conflict. Um, even when my mom passed, she told me, "Oh, you're gonna get everything." She had a little bank account, maybe $10,000, $20,000 in there, Um, and then, when she passed, it was like, oh no, this is in the will for my son, which I was fine with. But it was interesting because, the lawyers or whatever, they're like, oh yeah, you could take power of attorney, is
Mm.
basically what they told me. My mom had terminal cancer,
Oh wow.
stage 3 or whatever, Morgellons carcinoma, whatever, the skin cancer type thing. And, I made the decision that, what, mom is still able to make her decisions. Sure, I could come in and take medical charge or take financial charge and tell her what to do. But I decided, what, let her do what she wants. She lived her life. She saved her money.
Hmm.
She decided to sell her house and go travel,
Hmm. Wow.
basically live her life how she wanted. She actually drove her car up to Canada and eventually, put her car on a boat and went
Uh-huh.
to Alaska. So this is
Oh
something she
wow.
wanted to do her whole life.
Wow.
And, I guess if I would have said, no, I'm power of attorney, you go to the hospital, you stay here, I could have done that.
Right.
But it's just, I was driven to say, you know what, mom, you the one who saved your pennies and live frugally enough to have this. Who am I to say you can't go spend your money how you want, go traveling up to Alaska? Um, you know,
Yeah.
with some people are like that, and other people are like, nope, I'm power of attorney. This is how it is. You go see this doctor. You go have this treatment. You live here. So there's definitely room for some conflict. And I guess doing estate sales. I don't know how much you're going to get into that, but I imagine that's something that's on pretty much every estate, where there's more than one heir. Who gets what? I get the car, I get the collection, I get the bank account, I get the house, or I get the mountain cabin or whatever. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I know, right?
and I know a lot of times it comes down to, okay, no, we're just going to cash it all out and split the money.
Yeah. It's good to have it prearranged. I think it's awesome what you did for your mom, letting her live out her wishes. Going to Alaska and doing that. That's super cool because, that way there's no regrets. It's like almost like when you get to that last part of your life, it's almost like angelic. The last part. I have a friend who has, definitely cancer, terminal cancer, and right now he's on a cruise with his girlfriend, and that's just it's a bucket list thing. He wanted to do this cruise, and it'll probably be his last cruise. But he's on that trip right now, and he's enjoying his life. So thankfully, his kids haven't what do you call it, intervened in that sort of like his wishes. Where he wants to go, what he wants to do, because he very well could be, um, sort of like bummed out at home or in a hospital, going like counting the days, watching Days of Our Lives on television or something, whatever. You know what I mean? So it's now he's on a cruise, enjoying his life and seeing the sights and having a nice time. So he manages to keep a good uplifted vibe about him, even though his he knows that his diagnosis is not the best. So his days are numbered. So there's that.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's a rough one. I
it
don't
is.
know
Yeah.
how I don't know how I'd react or respond if it was like, oh,
Yeah.
you have this, and
This much time.
I mean, I guess we all know eventually, um, at the end of life, it stops as far as what
Right.
we know, uh,
Yeah.
and so, we want to live our best life, not
Yeah.
necessarily always just for us, but, because we do have an influence on other people when we're
Yeah.
living. So, I mean, that's
No, for
important.
sure. Yeah, I know.
Um,
It's amazing. Yeah.
but no, that's kind of cool that you've been working, getting a little bit
Yeah.
of work
You know,
going.
yeah, getting the work going again. It's definitely kind of like a change in pace. I mean, I definitely want to get back to finalizing, like we were talking pre-show about finalizing my grandfather's project, because for those that came before us that made a great impact with a lot of people, and there's a fan club for my grandfather with his cartoon character, and there's people that of course know of his brother Elmer Woggon, and I just feel like a duty to sort of like get their work to the appropriate places, essentially museums, where it can be honored and kept, and climate controlled environment, all that kind of stuff, where um, certain museums have research libraries where you can go there and pull up the content and look at it in person, and then be sort of essentially influenced by it. Thankfully on Facebook and other social media platforms, there's people that spend a lot of time, which is wonderful, dedicated to history, um, especially pertaining to comic books. There's guys who start fan clubs and little pages for certain comic book characters, and they don't have any ownership or anything like that. They're just doing it for the love of the characters and the love of the storytelling. So they're essentially just sharing, little pages out of the comic books or little pictures of the comic book characters. So that's kind of fun, and being able to go to a library and research that stuff. I know it's very old-fashioned these days, but also libraries oftentimes have digital archives that are like researchable, um, and so that's pretty awesome that you can essentially probably. I've never gone to the very many museum websites. I have been on the Billy Ireland Cartoon Museum website, and it's fairly extensive. I mean, they probably have a good handle on their inventory of what's there. So if you search by name, it'll most likely come up, and it'll say, yes, we have this material on this person, or we don't. So there's that. And then oftentimes those museums, they will sell off, essentially, when they're donated materials. Sometimes they'll sell off some things that they have triplicates of, like a book. So they're sharing history, whether it's you buy it or you can witness it in person. That's the whole experience of it all. So I
So
enjoy the.
you've done some research as far as like what museums or what collections that Bill Woggon, your grandpa's
Yeah.
collection, might fit into.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I definitely know about the Billy Ireland Cartoon Art Museum. It's in Ohio, and it's the largest cartoon art museum, I believe, in the world. And there's that one. And then, of course, George Lucas is building a museum. It's not finished yet. It's in L.A. It's probably nearby the Coliseum somewhere. They found a, how they find these pieces of land. I have no idea, or what they were prior to. Um, but they managed to get a multi-acre location and build a completely brand new museum that looks probably much like a very modern, sort of almost like a Star Wars spaceship type of organic form, alien type of situation. So it's like, I think that'll be quite a amazing thing that'll really spark the imagination of kids. And, in the old days, if you probably I've never been to New York, I've been to Boston, but in New York, there's the Metropolitan Museum of Art and those places, and they kind of have a very old-fashioned feeling, almost like in Washington, the White House, and where Lincoln is, the Lincoln Monument and things like that. They're just brick and what would you call it, like marble. It feels very old, whereas in the modern era, for example, the Walt Disney Concert Hall in downtown LA and the Broad Museum that's right next to the Walt Disney Concert Hall, they look amazing, like spaceship, modern, what a child or a teenager would be super inspired by the architecture. So modern architecture, it's almost like science fiction. It looks like something out of your imagination that's hard to even imagine how awesome it is, but it's there in front of you, and you're going like, oh my God, that looks so cool that you want to take a picture of it. No matter who you are and what age you are, you're fascinated by the look of the museum. So that kind of that type of stuff really sparks, I think, kids' imaginations, to make them feel inspired to want to be an architect, to want to be an artist, want to be a cartoonist, whatever their fascination is. Um, they'll be fascinated from the minute they see the building, and much less
Yeah,
what's inside it. So
yeah,
that that
that's pretty cool.
it is
Because
cool.
I don't know. I remember going when I was a kid to a couple different museums, and there a lot of variants. Like even up at the little park up on the hill here, there's like a little kind of museumy thing that's got a lot of the old pictures and history and like old equipment or old tools or
Yeah,
old artifacts that are displayed, and it really does make a big difference. If you see one of these things just laying in the dirt, one of these artifacts, or if it's in a dusty old storage locker, it's less appealing than, oh, it's on display. It's got a nice case. It's got good lighting. It's presented with a story. It definitely makes a difference, and I definitely could see. I mean, your grandpa Bill Woggon stuff, sitting in either is it sitting in the storage container up at your property
I know,
where
right?
Jerico can go in there and work on his whatever and go,
Yeah,
oh, grandpa, look at all your cool stuff. Or is it somewhere in a museum where
yeah,
thousands, potentially tens of thousands or more people could check it out, and
for a
not
year.
just,
Yeah,
oh, let's thumb through it, but like, some of the more cool pieces, in a display case with some lighting and a backstory,
exactly.
so that
Totally.
not only can you see the items, but you can kind of learn the story and immerse yourself in that, because definitely, something like cartooning, I know it's changed a lot over the years with
Oh, for sure.
technology, but
Yeah,
it still kind of takes a certain person to have a vision in their mind and have the gumption and desire to put that out in some form of media, whether that's hand drawing, a magazine, a comic book, a comic strip, or even in the digital format these days. It's definitely something to consider, because that's how people are, and especially kids, when they see something that interests them, that's what kind of starts the journey,
yeah,
starts the life journey of learning
right.
and immersing themselves into whatever it is, whether it's architecture or comic books or history. um, it's
Yeah,
definitely good to spark those imaginative properties for
I
kids.
know, right? Yeah, for sure. I mean, like when I was working on cars, just started to work on cars, and my teacher had some pictures of him on the wall when they're carving the clay, because they make clay models out car clay models first, and they make scale models, which is a small, maybe it's the size of a small little table or something, or it sits on a little table or a little podium. So that car is essentially sculpted in clay first, and then eventually they make a full-size clay model of a car, for example. And the process of those guys, I was always loving the guys with the white lab coats, you know, sitting on a chair carving the clay car. It's like, who is this guy? He gets paid to sit on his butt and carve clay. I mean, what a cool job that is. Of course, nowadays they have a few new modern ways of they can mill. Essentially, a computer can scan an item and then blow it up. So they managed to cut corners a little bit to get to from point A drawing, let's say, or three-dimensional scale. You can with computers nowadays, you can look at all of 360 degrees around the object and have a lot more figured out. But there's still stuff that you have to figure out once you blow it up, make it life size. Like, what does the inside of the door look like? What does the door jamb look like? What do the hinges look like? Because a lot of times the designers design stuff, but then the actual person who's building it and working on it, like, wait a second, this might look cool on paper, but to make it really work, that's a different thing, So there's those people too, like the engineers who have to sort of like come up with these essentially amazing gadgets. I mean, we had a minivan at the estate sale that was for sale where all the van seats folded down into the floor. So when you looked in the van, you're like, oh, there's nothing in the van. It's just empty except the two front driver passenger seat, but it looked like a giant, like a little cargo van. So I'm like, wait, where's the seats? They're all folded down, literally like they fold down to where they're only like probably 1 foot thick under the floor. So the floor is completely flat, but the seats actually you just got to press a couple buttons and flip a couple switches, and then you literally can open up hatches and then fold up these seats that just appear out of nowhere. So that whoever designed that was a freaking genius at Dodge, So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's pretty cool. I know
it
that
is.
in the little Subaru we fold the back seats forward,
Okay.
and there's a little spot back there that basically it's you could take a nap there if you wanted to.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's
It's
amazing.
it's definitely interesting how a design idea has to go through that engineering part. Just because it's a cool looking design doesn't mean that it's going to be a functional design.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. No, that's the
you
truth.
know, form follows function, but at the same time, form, if form is the highlight, you have to figure in the function of it behind the scenes, under the floorboard per se, how to
Yeah,
engineer those seats to fold up. But it's
exactly.
definitely nice to have something that you can convert. I've been
Right.
watching these tiny home conversion things, and um, how you got a foldable desk, and your kitchen is actually in a cabinet that you open up, and things pull out, and then you put away, and then in the same space you fold out a bed, or during the day, maybe that folds into a couch,
All
you
right.
know so you could have the same space having multiple things because of how it was designed and engineered. um and so I think that's definitely a cool topic,
Yeah,
as
no, for sure. Yeah, there was a truck that we had. I used to work for a company called the Prototype Source, and they made prototype. Uh, they worked on prototypes for car companies, so they would get contracted to build the prototype. They did the first prototype, I believe, of the Volkswagen Bug, the new one. So when the Bug first came out, they had done the prototype for it, and then of course it goes back down to Volkswagen. Volkswagen Audi had a place in Simi Valley, like a little design studio type place. So they get contracted to build the model, and they did a convertible model and a hardtop model and all that stuff. And then there was a truck that they had done, like I say, a full size model for like maybe Pontiac or Ford or somebody like that. But it was one of those first designs where it was like a sport utility truck, but the bed was super short, so it was only like maybe a 5 foot long bed. And but then they're like, wait a second, what can we put in a 5 foot long bed? So they had to engineer these little bars that would go on the bed of the truck to sort of make it so you could put a jet ski or something in the bed of your truck and still hold it in. So they
I
had,
had that on my little Ford
yeah,
Explorer.
right,
It was the Explorer Sport, so it had the
right,
dual cab, it had
uh huh,
4 doors on it, and a little short
right,
little 5 foot bed.
yeah,
But yeah, you could put the tailgate down, and there's a little gate thing that
yeah,
kind of extended the tailgate back to the
totally,
end of
a little bit
actually
farther,
opened the tailgate, and there was like
yeah,
a second tailgate that fit in there,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so you got that extra 2 feet.
To make it functional, right? Like to make it actually usable, because the guys
Yeah,
were like
I mean,
scratching their head, going, "Wait a second, what is it? This is funny. We gotta design something to make it even better." So it's like, the first impression made you think, and then they had to go back to the drawing board essentially. And these guys were like super multitaskers because they had to not only be able to design it and then perhaps pitch it to whatever company they're working for. Is like, hey, we figured out that this was a little bit of an issue, so here's our solution. So then they get in on the process too. So it's like it's not all done in house at Audi or Ford or Pontiac. Sometimes there's subcontractors that are involved in the process too that have to make stuff up and then kind of like pitch it back to corporate. So that sometimes it was always interesting to have the head honchos show up at work. The guys from Chevy or Ford or whoever we were working for would come, and they would just be these big shot guys. You could tell. And sometimes they'd also have like little journeyman graduate students or students from Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, because Art Center in Pasadena has a really cool automotive design department, and those kids get essentially handpicked out of school to go start to work for Nissan, whatever company, Porsche, So it's interesting how kids, essentially young people, I would say below 18 or just above 18 years old, can get and have ideas that are so groundbreaking that they get handpicked right out of like this kid's top-notch young designer, we're going to pull him because we want to keep our edge. That's the only way to keep an edge in the marketplace is to have like fresh, amazing ideas. You got to keep it fresh and new. What's new? What do you got? That whole thing. So that's always fun.
Absolutely. Got to keep
Yeah.
it fresh and new. Got to keep it fresh and new,
God, yeah.
Whether it's a design or a function
For
or,
sure.
utilitarian design. I know that, it takes a bit of effort,
Yeah,
to look at something. It takes a little skill, a little talent,
for
and you got
sure.
to nurture that and grow it to take, an idea and turn it into something.
Yeah.
It's up here in the light bulb area.
Yeah,
It's like, oh,
exactly.
I have this light bulb up here. How can I get it down here to show you? You know,
Yeah.
uh, a lot of times it is words. You'd be able to explain something. Sometimes it's pictures. Sometimes it's technical drawings. Schematics, blueprints, these type of things. You can get a better idea. And then with the mod 3D modeling today with digital and different computer tools, it definitely if you got the skills and the ability, it's definitely a talent that some of these big corporations do want,
Oh God, yeah.
and do need.
For sure.
And go out there. I mean, it's not just sports. It's not just sports. With the scouts or whatever, scouting the high school sports so they can get the people into college, or the pro level sports, scouting the college students to get them into the pro sports. There's also things like car design,
Yeah,
engineering,
for sure.
anything like design or art, or drafting. Even lawyers, I guess lawyers, that's a specialty trade. And then,
Oh, for
some of
sure.
these big businesses, by all means, I would imagine, go into these schools and kind of look for the talent and recruit the talent, offer internships or
Yeah.
paid internships or summer jobs. It's
Right.
where, someone in college can get this summer job, get some work experience, and then that company can kind of, okay, see what kind of talent this particular person can bring to the table to see, oh yeah, when they graduate, we're going to want them. Um, it's
Yeah.
a really cool dynamic when you start looking at the big picture. You look at, I'm just kind of visualizing Grandpa Bill's collection at the level you got it within the same
Yeah.
family, and then at the bigger level, like a museum, maybe even the National Museum, and just how much of a different light,
Oh, I
it
know.
gets shown, how much of a different showcase these displays can be put on, and it does create a different value. I
Oh,
guess it
for
creates
sure.
more value, just like a trading card. You see the trading cards, they're just clean in maybe a folder or in a plastic cover, and then you see the ones that are in the bricks in the plastic case. They're locked
Right.
in there. They're
Yeah.
they're permanent, and I guess that adds a certain amount of value. It's been judged, it's been rated, it's been, what quality is this? A 10? Is this a 7? Whatnot. But I guess
Yeah.
when it boils down to it, it's all individual, subjective preference. Me and my friend were talking about it, and it's like, oh, ice cream. Ice cream's good. Yeah, we both agreed ice cream's good. But then it got into, well, it's chocolate. Chocolate's the best. No, no, strawberry's the best. Strawberry's the best. No, no. And it's like, well, who's gonna say for you? I guess maybe strawberry's the best. For me, chocolate's the best, and that's just
Right.
an opinion. And so who
Yeah.
sets that opinion? I guess it's the guy with the most money can say, oh no, this is so valuable, I paid $1 million for it,
Right.
and that'll bring up value.
Exactly. It,
Desire, what do you want?
I know, right? And then what is it selling for at auction? Like these, like was it Gene? Was it? It's Basquiat, if that's the way to pronounce his name. I know he kind of like it was New York City. He's a young African American man, artist, and he lived a short life, but he was very prolific in his short life, and he was very like a beloved artist in New York. And now his work, it sells for millions of dollars, and it's in most of the major museums. And you would never know back then. A kid essentially I would say his work is very childlike. So looking at something that's childlike and colorful and very primitive looking. Um, but the discerning collector obviously loved him from the beginning, and then he passed away, unfortunately. And then in his afterlife, his work thankfully was essentially approved by the people that do those approvals and say, yes, we're going to make this happen, and put him and got him into museums. And now if some an individual collector has his work will be definitely seen as highly collectible and highly valuable. And then when it goes up for auction, it's millions of dollars. So it's wild how that the whole art world is a fascinating subject. So, well, good. We wrapped another show, man. Good
We
day.
did it. We made it through.
Yeah.
Almost spilling my coffee here.
Yeah, exactly. Me too, man. Well, you have a great day, Aaron. Good.
All right.
You,
we'll see you tomorrow. Have an awesome day, brother.
Sounds good. You too, buddy. All right. Bye-bye.